Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. I call Timothy Gaston to wind.
Very much, Mr. Speaker, and indeed I want to thank the members that through their tone they might not agree with the amendments that I brought forward today, but we've all had a good discussion on them, and I trust that they see the heart that's behind the amendments that I have brought to this House today. And regardless of the outcome of today's debate, due to my amendments being tabled, this bill firmly applies and recognises where, either through choice or led by medical evidence, that aborted babies will be included in this scheme. This was not the case in the previous debate at an earlier stage. We have moved in this House, and I certainly welcome that we now recognise that those babies lost through abortion can't be left and need to be recognised, and that is a change in direction of this House. The life of a baby starts at conception, and it's important that life is recognised and included in this certificate scheme. If, and this is the clarity that I've tried to bring today, only if the parent wishes to avail of a certificate. The inclusion of my amendments won't automatically mean that those that have lost a baby through abortion will automatically get a certificate, and that, as I've said earlier on, is a misrepresentation of my stance. Mr. O'Toole, going through a few of the speakers, started off as the chairman of the committee in the first instance. He wanted to thank the 40 responses at committee stage, and he paid tribute to those that gave personal testimonies, and I'm sure that was very delicate, and I'm sure that was very traumatic, but also it has to be acknowledged that those that have gave their own personal testimonies needs recognised, and we must commend them for that. Mr. O'Toole then went on to speak on behalf of the SDLP, but I wondered throughout his contribution if he was speaking on behalf of everyone in his party, or were those that sit in the back benches sympathetic to some of the amendments that I put forward today. Regarding Amendment 4, he said he didn't object to it in principle. Amendment 5, he voiced his objections, but what I would say, that Stormont decides principles, civil servants fill in the details, but it's the principle that no grieving parent is excluded. It belongs to this House to make sure it's on the bill. And previous debates, as I've said earlier, previous debates didn't include those lives lost through termination. Gemma Dolan was up next speaking on behalf of Sinn Féin. She said that I oppose equality and cause division. And just to clarify once again that my amendments reflect basic first day biology. It's a biology lesson, and that's where my opposition to this schedule comes from. Diane Forsyth was up next, and I must say it was a heartfelt contribution. I really felt there was a genuine stance in some of the thoughts that she put forward. And she reminded this House that death is a part of life that we all must navigate. A concern was raised then shortly after regarding the sex of the baby, and Miss Armstrong came in to say that not all babies you can understand or you know what their sex is. And just to clarify and to clear that up, that what I am proposing is that there be an appendix to the form in terms of sex and name. No one needs to leave anything blank. If they don't know, they don't have to fill in the appendix at all. This is about the personhood of the unborn child. So I trust that that clarifies Clause 11, subsection 3b. That no. Yes, happy to.
Thank the member for giving way on that point, and as I said during my contribution, I don't actually object to what the member is proposing per se in that instance. But does he not agree that, given that we have done a 12-week consultation and many bereaved parents have taken the time to respond to that, it would be wrong of us to proceed in primary legislation before we've had an opportunity to actually account of their views and listen to them?
And indeed, the Minister said that there was 1,100 responses to the consultation. I'd like to thank every one of them that have submitted their views. But no, what I think is appropriate at this stage, that this chamber makes a decision and includes this clause at this stage. And I hope with that clarity that members in the House will indeed back this amendment. Diane then went on to speak in support of the amendment tabled by herself and Paul Frew. I note now that it has been removed pending the outcome of what the Minister has said. Mr Tennyson was up next. He said debates such as this are triggering and that language matters. And I trust that members will see today from my language, from the way I presented my amendments, that I have tried to do that. Amendment 4 he opposes. He doesn't oppose it essentially, but he'll oppose it anyway, and I believe his contribution will reflect that. Amendment number 5 regarding his comments, be assured that this has nothing to do with a culture war, and it's disingenuous to try and label me as entering in to that sphere. And indeed, it was the member that brought in this culture war into this debate when he went to the press at the weekend to misrepresent my stance and my party's stance on these issues. And again, in Mr Tennyson's contribution, biology doesn't matter according to the Gospel of Owen. So we then opposition to amendment number 6. Mr Aiken, Dr Aiken was next. He talked about dealing with this in compassionate terms, and it's important to get this right, and I trust and believe the Chamber has done that today. Mr Aiken went on to thank all those that had gave evidence. Deirdre Hargey was up giving us the typical equality speech. She said that I was demonising women. That is a misrepresentation of my stance, and it's nothing and does not reflect the heart I have behind these matters. Happy enough to take a point?
I think as a woman with experience, I speak from a point of experience on these issues, yes.
But at the same time, just because I'm a man doesn't mean that my views don't count. And I trust that when I have presented my arguments today, it's been done in a sensitive manner. Next up, we had Mr Frew, and he welcomed very jollily that we were dealing with legislation, and indeed thanked the staff on the committee that he has now left. I'm not sure if they're glad to get rid of him or not, but he certainly was in his element today when he was putting forward his debate. And he did point out that this is the first place in the British Isles to legislate for baby loss certificates. And don't let this be lost in the debate we've had today, that everybody in this House is supportive of this scheme. But it's just a case of some members have a different interpretation of things that need to be included. But don't let that take away where we are and where we're going. Brian Kingston was first up after lunch. This bill is consistent with the pro-life stance of the DUP, and he agrees with the voluntary nature of those that want to opt in or indeed don't want to avail of the scheme at all. Kelly Armstrong was up next and spoke about how hard the debate has been for herself today. I just want to pay tribute to Kelly for giving her own personal experiences, and not just today, but I've heard it in my short time in this chamber, and I must commend her for that. Yes, we might agree on some things and disagree on another, but it doesn't stop me recognising a heartfelt contribution, and that's what Kelly has indeed brought to this debate. But at some stages throughout the debate, she has misrepresented, and in my intervention I did point out that nobody is suggesting that on a certificate or on the form the word termination or abortion should be included, and that's simply wrong to try and peddle that and leave that at my feet, because that's not the heart, that's not what we want to achieve. And indeed, from Kelly's intervention, the word abortion appearing anywhere in legislation, she seems to take exception from that. And I do realise that that term can trigger, but it's legislation we're dealing with here. And indeed, I feel it's something that I do support, and my amendments deserve a place on this bill. We had Mr Carroll up next. Jerry talked about the gaps in the bill. He has an issue with charging for certificates. Amendment 4, he said, seems reasonable. Amendment 5, he talked about stigmatising women and creating a chill factor. Once again, that's certainly not right. And I trust members today, throughout my contribution, will take on board the nature that has come forward and the heart behind it and my intentions for the amendment. So on that note, my final statement, I suppose, to the House is, to sum all that up, my concern is that those who are opposed to include my amendments in this bill are those that don't agree that conception starts at birth. In a minute, I'm proudly pro-life. It's issues like this that brought me to the chamber, and every opportunity I have to raise these issues, raise these concerns, I indeed will get to my feet to make them. My faith guides my contributions in this chamber, and that's why I'm opposed to Schedule 8. That's why I have tabled the amendments that's before the House this evening. Happy to give way.
Thank the member for his intervention. Would the member agree with me that if you can acknowledge one member's heartfelt contribution as a woman with experience, the honourable, decent thing would be to acknowledge both women who spoke from the same perspective, rather than accusing of the usual equality stance?
Anybody that spoke from a personal capacity, whether it be a committee, whether it's been in this chamber, I certainly acknowledge that. I acknowledge the hurt and pain that they have went through. I have sincerity in doing that, but that doesn't stop me bringing forward the amendment in the manner that I have. So anybody that has lost a child through miscarriage, through termination, I fully have sympathy for them. I fully have sympathy for them, and that's one of the reasons I brought my amendment on abortion, that those at times that have aborted a baby do regret it later in life. Those that have a miscarriage grieve the loss of that child. How could you not grieve the loss of any child? Being a father, I know how much that my children mean to me, and I would strongly support this scheme in that if my wife was in the same position, that I could recognise that child, I could name that child, and that is what is the heart behind my amendments here today. So I will be moving the amendments tabled in my name on that basis.